This is Dan Dix here, reporting for Press for True. Today is Tuesday, August the 1st, 2017. It's a historical day for anybody involved in the cryptocurrency space, especially if you are a holder of Bitcoin, because today is the day for the proposed SegWit or hard fork solution to the scalability issue with Bitcoin. And joining us on the line right now to help break this down for us is our good friend Jeff Berwick of the Dollar Vigilante. So Jeff, thanks so much, man, for taking some time today to help break down this whole hard fork situation.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Dan.
Now, you've been covering Bitcoin since pretty much the beginning. You've been recommending it to your subscribers at $3 back as far as 2011, and you've successfully been predicting the booms and busts. I mean, you've been telling your subscribers when to buy, when to sell, and your predictions have been incredibly accurate. So I want to get your views on the future of this so-called Bitcoin Cash, or where this hard fork is going. But before we get into the technical aspects of what's actually happening today, maybe you could bring our audience up to speed about how Bitcoin got to this point. Going from 2009 up till today, how did we get to this point where this consensus was needed to solve this issue?
Yeah, that's quite a long story to go back through the entire history, but essentially Bitcoin was started in 2009. I didn't find out about it till about 2011, as you pointed out. It was around $3 at that time. I've been following it since then, though, and been probably one of the biggest promoters of it on the internet, just covering Bitcoin fairly constantly since 2011 and telling people that this is evolutionary, not even revolutionary, because we're not going back anywhere. This is evolutionary in terms of money and banking. This changes the entire game. So I've been covering it quite extensively since 2011, and really every year Bitcoin seems to have some sort of a problem. Of course, if you think about it, whoever designed it, and the person that the name of the person who designed it is called Satoshi Nakamoto. No one really knows exactly who that person is, but it's actually not that important. It's because it's open source software. But trying to imagine this currency before it even existed, like Bitcoin is such an advancement in technology, such a new way of doing things, such a paradigm shift that Satoshi Nakamoto was a true genius for having come up with all these ideas before anything like it ever existed before, coming up with the entire plan on how to do it, and essentially launching it into the wild. And it worked quite well for a number of, it's still working well to this day today. So it's amazing that it's been able to do that. But of course, it has had problems, of course, because you can't imagine every single problem that could happen along the road right from the get-go. So every year or so, Bitcoin seems to have a problem. Every year, there's a big panic among some people saying, "Oh, I'm worried that there's this happening, or there's some sort of issue with this." And it seems like every year it gets by whatever issue it was. This year, though, was the biggest issue it's had to date, in that it essentially become so popular. Bitcoin hit $3,000 this year, and it became so widely used and so popular that the entire network became bogged down, and it was really hard to get transactions to go through. There was taking sometimes hours, even sometimes days for a transaction to go through, and the cost went from being just a few pennies to transfer Bitcoin to sometimes into the tens or even hundreds of dollars at certain peaks. So this was because the network had become so massively used worldwide, it become so popular that the infrastructure needed to be expanded. And it's not so much the hardware, it's actually the software that needed to be improved. And that's where this all came down to, was how to improve this software. And that's what this has been all about to date.
Well, it seems that the community, as far as I can tell, has been somewhat divided on the proposed solutions. There's this concept of a SegWit, which I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is increasing the block size, as opposed to the hard fork, which is like splitting into a whole new blockchain altogether, like a Bitcoin 2.0. So what's happening with this divide? And I mean, it's around 11 a.m. right now, Pacific Standard Time, at the time of this interview. Where are we at with the hard fork? Has the first Bitcoin Cash block been mined yet?
Yeah, we're just a few hours into it right now, so we should say anything I'm saying here is definitely apt to change in the coming hours. We're just a few hours into it. Most people who have Bitcoin Cash for the first time don't even really have access to it yet. If they do, it's not trading yet on most exchanges, but it is trading. I see it on Kraken, has started trading. The last trade, if I look here, is $213, so about a little less than a tenth of Bitcoin for a Bitcoin Cash. So for people who don't know, it essentially split into, there's still Bitcoin the way it used to be, and there's now Bitcoin Cash, which is a split or a fork of Bitcoin. And you actually, if you held it properly, and it's too late to do anything now if you didn't, but if you held it properly and you had the private keys to your Bitcoin, you will actually have both right now. So you essentially get both. So it's interesting. So Bitcoin is actually trading at, let me just pull up what it's trading at the moment. It's at $2,700 as we speak, and as I mentioned, Bitcoin Cash is at around $200. So, in actuality, the total value that most Bitcoin people holders who have Bitcoin is about $2,900. So that's very close to its all-time high already. So that's very interesting, and this is actually very exciting for Bitcoin. Is that we are now a few hours into this fork that a lot of people had a lot of concerns about and thought this could really damage Bitcoin. This could be, the real heretics, the people like Mike, the health ranger Adams, who's a vitamin guy. I don't know why he even talks about Bitcoin, but he's like, this is going to destroy Bitcoin. And there's a lot of, very uninformed people who actually thought this could be catastrophic. But even people like myself, I had definite concerns about what would happen. We've never gone through an actual fork like this with Bitcoin. And so it's very great to see that we're a few hours in and nothing at all catastrophic has happened. In fact, the value of Bitcoin has gone up through this, which is incredibly gratifying and very bullish for Bitcoin that this is a major event. A lot of people had a lot of questions, and we're not seeing any downside so far for anyone through this process, which is absolutely fantastic. Now, what you brought up earlier is there's the old Bitcoin, the Bitcoin that everyone knows, still is trading, of course. And that's going to go through something called SegWit. And that's actually not an increase in the block size. That's actually going to happen on Bitcoin Cash. And this has been what the whole debate has mostly been about, is should they use something called SegWit to handle this increase in transactions, or should they just increase the block size of every block that comes out for Bitcoin? I'm not a techie, so I can't say exactly what is the best way. Although I do have a lot of concerns about the SegWit approach, and we'll see what happens. That's all going to be going into effect in the next few weeks, and it all will really come into effect by November, essentially. But now we're going to see Bitcoin Cash, and it's already moved to an 8 megabit block from a 1 megabit block, and so we'll see how that goes. And we're going to see what the market thinks of them both. And so what we might see is if there's problems with SegWit, or if Bitcoin continues to be slower, more expensive, we might actually see Bitcoin Cash increase in value quite dramatically as people say, okay, so it was better to go for the block size increase. Let's go for that and forget about the old Bitcoin. Or it could go the other way. It could the SegWit could work out perfectly fine, have no problems, and people say, okay, well, why bother with Bitcoin Cash? It's 1/10 of the value. It doesn't really make any major improvements, so why even care about it? And that one could fade into oblivion. So that's where it's at, and really there's no sure way of which way it's going to go at this point. In fact, I'm this week to our subscribers at the Dollar Vigilante really going to lay out some of the cases for what might happen, and I'm definitely advising people out there right now not to necessarily sell your Bitcoin Cash right away. I think this is a very epic and monumental time, and I would just wait to see how things start to play out here.
The only example that I can think of that comes anything close to what we're witnessing today, I suppose, is what took place with Ethereum and the split into Ethereum Classic and the new Ethereum token. Is this comparable to what happened there? Is it essentially the same thing with having Ethereum and Ethereum Classic, Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash?
No, it's a very different reason for why they happened. Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash is a dispute over the best way to improve Bitcoin. Ethereum forked because of problems with the DAO, and they actually rolled it back. So that was actually something that I had major concerns about. I wasn't a big fan of being able to roll back and say, okay, there was some problems and a lot of people lost a lot of money, so we're just going to change the actual network and change the actual rules of the network. Those things are supposed to be immutable. They're supposed to be untouchable, and they weren't with Ethereum. Of course, Ethereum actually went on and has done phenomenally well afterwards, so it hasn't hurt Ethereum at all. So that's good to know. But it actually increased so dramatically. I think it was around $10 when it did its fork, and now it's around $200. It hit $400. So that was a totally different situation, but it was interesting, and that was the first time we saw a fairly major cryptocurrency go through a fork. And what we found out from that one was you don't necessarily lose in a fork situation, because you ended up with Ethereum and Ethereum Classic, and many people actually ended up with actually more value. Same thing as what's happened with Bitcoin today. You actually, if you own Bitcoin yesterday, it was worth about $2,800. If you own Bitcoin today, it's worth about $2,700, but then Bitcoin Cash is worth about $200, so it's actually worth $2,900. So you've actually increased your value through this fork so far. We'll see what happens, though, in the coming days.
Yeah, it's really going to be interesting to watch this over the coming days. As you said earlier, too, I'm surprised at the lack of volatility. I thought it would be actually kind of all over the place, and especially around this time. But it's interesting to see that it's managing to stay stable. So having said that, I mean, what I'm also not concerned about, but just I know a lot of people out there who are not familiar with how this works are concerned, is that there's certain wallets like the blockchain wallet, for example, and exchanges who are not necessarily going to be holding Bitcoin Cash. And a lot of people are wondering what's going to happen to their regular old Bitcoins in a wallet such as like a blockchain wallet if they don't accept Bitcoin Cash. What happens to their Bitcoins? Are they still secure and safe?
Well, basically everyone who had Bitcoin yesterday has Bitcoin today. Nothing's changed whatsoever. Now, it depends where they held it. If they had it at, say, Coinbase, which is the largest Bitcoin exchange in the US, Coinbase has said they're not supporting Bitcoin Cash whatsoever. So if you held your Bitcoin there yesterday, today you still have your Bitcoin, but you don't, in addition to it, have the Bitcoin Cash. Coinbase, which I'm not a big fan of, it's one of the worst run exchanges. And of course, it's in one of the most unfree and highly regulated sort of fascio communist countries in the world, the U.S. So they really can't hardly do anything there. People are so enslaved financially in the U.S. But in general, people, if they have their Bitcoin there, they're not going to even have the Bitcoin Cash. This is something that people should have figured out over the last week or so. If they didn't figure it out and they didn't do anything, and they were holding their Bitcoin at Coinbase, it's too late. That Bitcoin Cash. Now, Coinbase could still give that Bitcoin Cash to their customers, and this could actually end up in a whole lawsuit sort of situation. Typical sort of U.S. Everything's lawsuits, but for people who just had Bitcoin yesterday and they held it wherever they held it, on a wallet, they held it in an exchange, anywhere, they still have their Bitcoin today. So there's absolutely nothing to worry about with that. The only thing to maybe worry about is what will be the value of Bitcoin in the future. If Bitcoin Cash starts to catch on, then we'll see the actual value of Bitcoin go down and the value of Bitcoin Cash go up. But that's something for the future and not necessarily a problem to worry about just necessarily right now today. In this
current atmosphere, is there room for something new to maybe take advantage of this, this insecurity about what's going on? Can a new coin maybe come in, take the ranks as the number 2 or maybe even the number 1, take over Bitcoin? What are you currently excited about and recommending to your subscribers?
Well, right now, nothing comes close to Bitcoin. I'm just looking at the market cap of Bitcoin right now. It's $45 billion. The next closest is Ethereum at 20 billion, but Ethereum is not a competitor to Bitcoin. It's not a currency. It's more of a smart contract platform. It's got different usages. And then there's things like Ripple, and that's totally different as well. That's something that the banks might use to replace the SWIFT system. That's got a $6 billion market cap. And then there's Litecoin's next closest at 2 billion. So there's really nothing that comes close to Bitcoin, although in the last year, because of Bitcoin having these problems and not quickly fixing them, it's actually allowed a lot of these other cryptocurrencies, especially things like Dash and Litecoin, to catch up to Bitcoin in some respects, to actually gain ground on it, because there was issues, and a lot of people were worried a number of months ago, is Bitcoin just going to grind to a halt? Because it seemed like nothing was going to happen, and it seemed like there was a period of time there where it was taking a few days for Bitcoin transactions to go through, and that was not good for Bitcoin whatsoever. So people started to think, well, let's look at these other currencies, and there's things like Dash that have all kinds of different ways of doing things, and some of them are far better than Bitcoin. The big thing with Bitcoin is it has by far the biggest, most trusted, safest network out there. you don't have to worry about Bitcoin just going away tomorrow or someone being able to just hack it because it's so small. It's got the biggest supercomputer network in the world. So it really, like, there's nothing that can come in and be so big that it can squash it. So that's the real value of Bitcoin. But yeah, there is a number of other cryptocurrencies, and that's been the story of 2017 so far, is the rise of these cryptocurrencies. About a year ago, the total valuation of all the cryptocurrencies, not including Bitcoin, was around a few $1 billion, and now it's around something like $50 billion. So it's gone up dramatically. There's been all kinds of huge gains. Of course, there's Ethereum, as I mentioned, Ripple, Litecoin, Dash, Monero, and a number of others have all done fairly well. So that's, and a lot of these have a number of different usages, a number of different things. For example, I just featured to our subscribers one called EOS or EOS, and that is sort of a competitor to Ethereum. So there's a whole market going on. And for people who haven't looked into it, this is really the same as the internet stocks in the 1990s. This is an absolute evolution in an entirely new sort of a sector, just like the internet was. And there's all kinds of competing sort of technologies going on out there, and it's incredibly exciting. So for people who haven't looked into it at all, it's absolutely something to be looking at, the same way that I would have recommended in 1996 to look into internet technologies and internet investments. I'm saying the same thing about cryptocurrencies today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an incredible time to be involved with it, and it's exciting to see where blockchain technology is going to go in the future, especially with these new developing blockchains with smart contracts and all that. Very, very exciting time, to say the least. So Jeff, I can't have you on and close this out without asking you a little bit about the upcoming Anarchapulco 2018. I know I'm excited for it. I know a lot of the other people who have attended all the previous conferences are excited for it. What can you tell us? What are the latest developments in your upcoming conference next year?
Well, because you asked, you're going to actually get the scoop down. We haven't announced this to anyone yet, but we actually soft launched the website for Anarchapulco 2018. We haven't told anyone yet, but your audience gets it first. So if you go to anarchapulco.com, you see our new website for 2018, and a lot of people who have seen it already really love it. It's going to be February 15th to 18th in Acapulco, Mexico. You've been to the last few years of it, and it'll be happening again in February of 2018, and it's going to be even bigger and better than it was last year. It's going to be at a new hotel. We keep moving hotels. We keep outgrowing most of the hotels. We didn't actually outgrow the one this year, but the only one that can hold us on the beach now that had for the size, because we're expecting up to about 1,000 people next year, is the Princess Hotel. So that's going to be at the Princess next year on the beach in Acapulco, Mexico, and looking forward to seeing you down here again, Dan.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to going. As I said, it's by far the best conference I've ever been in attendance at. So I'm going to encourage the PFT viewers to join us down there. We'll have links in the description below. If not today, then we'll have them soon for your affiliate links. Jeff, thanks so much for helping us break down this hard fork situation and all the future of Bitcoin. Much appreciated, my friend.
My pleasure.